We should talk about sex like we talk about brushing our teeth, right? It's just part of our lives.
Welcome to the Be Well Baby podcast. I'm Dr. Emily Spaeth, founder of Be Well Baby in Portland, Oregon, and the Beyond Birth Blueprint, an online community where we support families through pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and especially life with a baby. This podcast exists because I believe families deserve better than what I am seeing in my work as a physical therapist, lactation consultant, and childbirth educator. Just a quick loving note before we dive in. Everything you hear on this podcast is for educational purposes only. It's not medical advice. Every body and every baby and every season is different, and you deserve support that is personalized to you. Let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Be Well Baby podcast. I am excited to bring you this conversation because this is one of my favorite topics to discuss with my clients. And I love talking about it with Krystle because we have really similar views on it, but come at it from very different perspectives. People don't bring this up when you're having a baby, but having sex after birth was probably the thing that I was the most afraid of. So my guest today is Krystle Gard. She's a postpartum doula and intimacy and connection coach who has lived this from every angle, including home birth, twins, and 3 surrogate pregnancies that gave her a wild before and after comparison that most people don't get. She got a lot of opportunities. We really get into the communication systems that kept her marriage afloat during the newborn haze, why self-pleasure is so important and so overlooked. And we talk about a simple practice called the 3-minute game that can rebuild intimacy without any pressure for it to lead anywhere. We also talk about lube, positions, birth trauma, and what it actually takes for your body to feel safe with touch again. This one is honest and a little silly, and I think that you're going to feel a lot less awkward and alone after listening to it. Let's get into it. Krystle, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi.
Hi. Your first birth was a supported home birth, and then later you had twins without a local support system.
Yeah.
I want to know how those two very different experiences shaped how you understand intimacy and connection after birth.
Yeah. And so it actually, we were kind of on our own for both of them. My first was a home birth with midwives. So there was a kind of a communal network that way, but we were on our own in the fact that we were in Alaska by ourselves and it was just the 3 of us. And then with the twins, we were also in a new state with the 5 of us. So it really did kind of come down to just me and my partner and just diving in. And so I think a lot of it was, yes, it was all hands on deck, but we made sure we found those moments of like, ooh, this doesn't feel right. Because, you know, there's always those moments of like resentment or I'm up and you're not up, or I need that and you're not doing that. And so we made it very important and meticulous to like have those conversations even early on. That was just like, I need more, I need less of this, because once the chaos hit, there wasn't a lot of time around trying to find that. And so I feel like I'll probably say it a million times, like communication is the base of all intimacy and connection, right? So like we just started there and was just like in the chaos of all the beauty and the magic of postpartum, let's just make sure we're having those moments of communication. And then, you know, when you have 3 under 4 and your husband's traveling, you just can't take everything too seriously. We kind of really found the moments that were important and the moments that weren't, and just made sure to just let the little things go in that time frame when we didn't have the capacity to hold all of the space.
Yeah. I love thinking about it that way because it's so chaotic, you know, and you know, having twins in and of itself is huge, but having twins and a toddler sounds impossible to some families.
And I think too, like, and I love languages, you know, most people know what those are. And if you don't, Google it because it's important and we'll talk about it more. But a huge piece of it is verbal communication is my husband's love language and mine is definitely not. And so there was a lot of tension around communication. And so what we came up with is kind of a red light, green light scenario where when he had something that he needed to talk about, he would come to me and it would be like, okay, this is a green light scenario where like, it's okay, we can manage it later, but I'm going to put it on a little whiteboard that we need to talk. Or, hey, this is yellow light scenario, like let's talk within the next hour. Or this is red light, like I need you to stop what you're doing and like focus on me. Because a lot of times it would be like him coming at me while I'm nursing or thinking about dinner or doing the dishes or changing a diaper. And what he had to say was not invalid, but I needed to know how much of myself he needed. And so that was a huge turning point for us, I think, too.
Yeah.
Especially, like I said, when you're dealing with 3 under 4 and twins and a toddler running around and all of this stuff.
Yeah. And I know that, you know, we come to this subject from very different perspectives, but I'm curious, as a doula and even personally, was there a time where you realized that postpartum intimacy needs as much care and attention as feeding, sleep, and recovery from birth?
Yeah, so much. You know, a lot of it was from my own personal journey. Obviously, I was exhausted and had really bad postpartum depression when I started menstruating again after the twins, and there was a lot going on. But again, it kind of just falls to the wayside. It's not a topic we talk about. It's not brought up in conversations or mommy circles. And, you know, it's just like, get your physical body back and you'll be fine. And so I kind of went on a learning journey of myself. I'm a nerdy academic and I love all things education. So I took this really empowering class called The Power of O about 6 years ago. And it was just so mind-opening to me about like how powerful our orgasms and our orgasmic energy is and how healing it can be when we access it. And also just learning about the different archetypical energies, right? We talk about masculine and feminine energy at the like very archetypical kind of like time frame, right? We have both inside of us, but like understanding that like who I was before babies was very energetically very, very different than who I was after. And just finally understanding that, it was like this aha moment where like, oh, that's it. Like that right there. Like I am not the same and I can't figure out how to fix it.
Because there's nothing to fix. You're just a different human.
Yeah. And like how to access that now. And what does that look like? So, and then kind of around the same time frame, I started doing more postpartum work. And like, yeah, I was a birth doula and had my own babies, but you know, as I was immersing myself into this postpartum work and having that come in, it was like, there is no talk, there's nothing, there's no resources, there's no communication, there's no connection, there's nothing to support these new families in it. And, you know, if they're lucky enough and smart enough to take a class beforehand, because there are some great ones out there, awesome. And there are some books and resources, and that's great too. But again, if you're not doing it before baby arrives, you're not going to have time to read like a 400-page book postpartum.
You're going to feel like the priority is not your intimate relationship with your partner.
100%.
The priority is feeding your baby or even just feeding yourself, taking a shower.
And on literal, the biological level, right? Our brains rewire themselves when we become parents. Like how amazing is that? And so cool. But also it allows us to have a one-track mind only for that little tiny human. And it's so easy to let everything else fall away. And that's a huge piece of it is it's like, we're not saying, you know, nobody is saying go have sex at 2-3 weeks postpartum. Nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, knock on. There are a few people, but very few people are going to be in that space. But it's about trying to continue those moments of intimacy and connection woven through the chaos of postpartum so that if and when you're ready, it's not this weird, awkward moment that's like, oh crap, like I don't even know what's going on.
Or who you are or who I am anymore in this new body. Yeah,
because it's so different.
It's cool that really becoming a postpartum doula grew out of your parenting experience. Is that right? And then from that and from supporting families postpartum and seeing this gap, you ended up becoming a intimacy and connection coach.
Yeah, and it was. I had absolutely no help with the twins as far as like external help. I was lucky enough to exclusively breastfeed, which is great, but also means my partner's not helping me. I didn't sleep. I was so brain fogged, I didn't think about waking up the sleeping baby. And so even though they were sleeping 4 or 5 hour stretches, I was up every 2 hours for about 18 months. And sleep deprivation is a big thing. And
Huge.
so I was like, that was part of the postpartum is like, I don't want people to have to go through that. Like, I want to help people. I want to be a resource that tells them you can do this, you can do that. You can wake a sleeping baby. You can choose mental health over breastfeeding in the moment if that feels important, right? So that, yeah, I totally grew out of that. And then as I'm having these conversations and being in a space of vulnerability with these families, right? Like it's such an amazing experience to be in that space with them and watching them learn to be parents and grow. There was always this like, again, this elephant in the room where it's like, okay, we're starting to get to 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks postpartum, and what? Like, they'd be like, oh, I had my 6 week visit today, and we would joke and laugh, be like, oh, did you get your birth control? And I was like, this isn't okay. Like, this is not how the conversation should be going, right? And that's when I would start to like, gently weave in the conversation because it is still taboo and it is uncomfortable for people to talk about. But yeah, and that's how this coaching piece of it grew out of it. And it's like, I'm not a trained psychotherapist, but I've been through it. I've done the classes, I've done the research, and I'm here to like listen and let's navigate and see what we can create moving forward for sure.
Yeah. And it's very common, if not expected, for desire and sensation and the connection with your partner to totally shift after birth,
Yeah.
especially early on.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many things going on postpartum, right? We've got potential birth trauma, physical recovery, support systems, the baby's personality. Like my oldest, he was I call him my Klingon. That baby was not put down ever unless he was sleeping. And even then, you're lucky if you got a half hour, right? Going back to work, sibling, all the hormonal shifts. Like, just how could you not? Like, how can we not? I mean, like you said, let alone finding who we are, let alone our partner and our relationship. Because they're three different pieces, right? There's yourself, your partner, and your relationship together.
Yeah.
They're all kind of their own entity in this triangle. And even if you're by yourself and unpartnered, finding out who you are post baby, intimately and sexually is a huge piece of it for sure. And then again, that sleep deprivation piece is massive. And we talk about how massive it is, and in the moment of the twins, like I lost the sense of taste and smell because I was so sleep deprived. My body was choosing what to do to survive, like literally. And then because I've been a surrogate, I've had postpartum scenarios where, yes, I'm pumping, so I'm not getting as much sleep, but there's no baby, so my sleep is real, deep, right? My healing was 10 times faster mentally and physically, right? And that was such an aha moment to physically go through that. And it was just, again, another layer of like, this is all the things we know, which is more like proof of it.
Totally. I don't want to gloss over the fact that you've been a surrogate multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we count them on one hand?
I've been a surrogate 3 times. So I've had 6 babies, 5 pregnancies, and all my surrogate babies were for the same family. So it's been an amazing experience.
Amazing.
And I joked and got into it because I had 2 for the price of 1. But I'm just very blessed and lucky that I have very easy pregnancies and very easy deliveries, and it works for us.
It works for your body. What would you, so many families are thinking that there is something wrong with them postpartum. What are the most common kind of misunderstandings that you're encountering about sex after birth specifically? And I love that you've had 3 postpartum experiences without a baby to be able to sort of understand what it would be like if you weren't being awoken every hour.
Yeah. But there's so many pieces of it, right? Like even being postpartum without a baby, there's the physical aspect. So I think that it's kind of like a twofold. So I feel like you kind of have one of the top issues or concerns is the physical, like pain and or just fear of the physical pain and that aspect of it, right? And like that is a little bit more straightforward because that's something we can like tangibly work on, right? We can do self-exploration. We have support networks and providers, pelvic floor therapy, massage, craniosacral, chiro, acupuncture, right? We have all of these networks of people who specialize in that kind of physical aftercare. So like there's that piece of it. And a lot of it is getting through that piece first. But then most of it is the other, I don't have the libido. I don't want sex anymore. I want to have sex, but I don't want to have sex. Like that's the piece I feel like we all kind of get stuck in a lot of the times. And that's kind of, again, that's where my journey started. Like I was a very physically masculine sexual person, right? Like I wanted it all the time. I had high libido. I initiated, like I was like dominant, like that's where I was. And then I'm in this space where it was just like, I don't want sex and it feels weird. Like what's wrong with me, right? Like that play, that story we tell us. And it's so common. And so like that's the piece of it that I really break down with people is one, understanding your new wants and needs, and then your partner doing the same, and then understanding each other's wants and needs, because that's where that we get in that space where it's again, this is how we were, and this is how we need to be again, when in reality that's probably not the truth anymore for both people. Because again, new parenting affects everybody. Sleep deprivation affects everybody in that capacity.
And there's also this unspoken thing that happens where you are being touched all day long. It's a lot of sensory input. And not only that, you're sleep deprived and your identity is shifting. So it's like you were a person before, like you said, for example, Krystle, you were a person with a high libido. And then it feels like a personal failure when you are no longer that person.
100%.
And yet it is still, you know, something that you want to have intimacy and connection with your partner. So you touched very briefly on self-exploration. Let's talk about why self-pleasure are often overlooked and why they're so freaking important.
Yeah. And I love the word self-pleasure because the word masturbation is actually a really derogatory term when you break down the Latin. So I love we're going with self-pleasure and self-exploration because that's what it is, right? So basically the root is like hands are defiling your body. And that is like the absolute opposite of what we're trying to get to, right?
Yeah. And so using the term, that's why I use the term self-pleasure. It's so important to think about, what does this body like now? It's different than maybe before.
And I think too, like depending on your upbringing, again, like masturbation, self-pleasure could be very frowned upon. Like I remember having very specific moments of my childhood, my young adulthood, being shameful that I was doing this because it was frowned upon and shameful. And so there was this like back and forth internally with like, this brings me pleasure, but I'm not supposed to be doing it. And so for a lot of people, like that's where we sit in that world. And so the idea of doing it to explore after birth is even like, could be even more out there. So
yeah, I think also, especially people who've been socialized as women, it is something that even if people are saying, like verbally telling you it's okay to do that, it doesn't feel okay. And I hope that this new generation of children that we're raising doesn't feel that way. But gosh, it was so shameful, you know, to feel any kind of pleasure. I mean, to the point where I don't think I actually had my first orgasm until I was like into my 20s, you know?
Yeah. And I was sexually very young. So even when I was young in like my teens and like, I literally remember like doing it and then like praying that I wasn't going to be like smited because of it. Like, right. Like this is crazy. And like, this is off topic, but we are a very sexually forward out family, obviously. And my son is 14 and we're in this age where we're talking about sex and being sexual and he has a girlfriend. And I was like, we had to stop and I had a conversation with him. I'm like, I need you to understand that one, you're a man. You're a white cis man in this world, and that is a very different experience than your girlfriend. And two, her upbringing could be very different than ours. And what you're talking about or wanting to do could be looked at as shameful for her and her family. And to be really respectful of what her needs and wants are in the conversations you're having. He was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And I was like, yeah. So it's just, all to say it just weaves itself, right, into parenting, and that if we can come to self-love and come to self-exploration in ourselves, it very gently can roll out into parenting and partnership and relationships in a really healthy way.
I just wanted to pop in here and say that if the Be Well Baby podcast has helped you in any way, if our team has helped you in any way, the people who find us because they heard about us from a friend, because they heard about us from a midwife or a doula, or their pediatrician, or their OB. And we value those connections so much. And we know that the only way for people to find excellent healthcare is for people to talk about it. So if It will help people find this podcast. If we band together and shout this from the rooftops, then we will be able to change healthcare. Thanks. So what would you say to someone who is in that situation where they're postpartum, they have no libido, they want to have sex with their partner, but they really don't? What would you say to someone who feels totally disconnected from their body?
Yeah, I think a part of it is, and I say this a lot, is like pleasure is not external. Pleasure is inside of our bodies, and we access pleasure. We are born to experience pleasure. And so a lot of, and kind of going back a little bit to as far as sleep deprivation affects us on so many levels. Right? It affects our hormones. So our testosterone lowers in both men and women. Our estrogen lowers in women, right? Our dopamine response is totally wiped out. All right. That's our pleasure center. That's what brings us joy. And when your dopamine reward system is nulled out, like you're not going to want sex because your body is not connecting the dots, right? It's not saying sex brings me joy and pleasure, right? So, and the same thing with our nervous system. If our nervous system is on high alert and we're on all the time and we're not in a safe, relaxed zone, our body is not going to be like, I'm safe. And so a lot of it is accessing pleasure in different aspects of our life. And that could be like, I mean, who hasn't had fun just dancing to a song, right? Like putting on some good music and dancing with yourself, with your little one, with your partner, right? Starting to access these like little moments of pleasure and joy amongst the like exhaustion, to start to tap into those dopamine responses again. Like let your body know what pleasure is on an intimacy connection level. And then as we get into the physicality of it, like again, the normalization of the fact that your body is different. It's not going to be the same. And
I want to like pause here for a second because just on a physiologic level, you mentioned birth trauma as like like that could be something impacting your ability to want to be touched. But I work with so many families who have either had a traumatic birth experience and now any touch feels unsafe to their nervous system. They know that their partner loves them and it should feel safe, but any touch to their body feels unsafe. And there's also this fear around, will my body be able to orgasm?
Yep.
Or am I so damaged, that my body won't be able to orgasm and then I'll feel bad, which is another argument for exploring this pleasure on your own. And I love the idea of just pleasure in general. It doesn't have to be sexual pleasure yet.
No, and even just like smelling a flower and taking a flower and like touching your body with it, like enhancing, like you said, positive pleasure touch responses. And so, a lot of the times if there's more trauma and fear with, their sexuality in their body, a lot of it, I'm like, have you ever looked at yourself? Like, again, a shameful thing to do. And so maybe it's as simple as getting a mirror and looking at your body, looking at your vulva and your labia and what does it look like? And if you've never looked at it before, you might not know a difference. But if you have, like, what does the difference look like? And in that aspect of just trying to get to know yourself without any pressure of orgasming and pleasure. And like, that's a piece of it too, right? Is taking out the pressure of that. And it's more, an exploration is the right word. We're just trying to figure out what this body is and what it needs and wants. Is a huge piece of it. Yeah.
And I think I have people take out a mirror all the time because a lot of times I'm working with a scar, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 4th degree tear or some degree. And there's a fear that it's going to look scary or there's a prolapse and there's just this fear around even looking and worrying that your partner will think you look different or feel different. And I mean, years of pelvic floor physical therapy experience I can tell you, typically it doesn't feel different. Your vagina is actually designed to stretch and to come back to its original. And the changes that can take place are with suturing. So if somebody sutures a little too tight, or if your body rejects sutures, there's so many different things that could happen. But I think that having the courage really to mirror and look at yourself and explore your own body I think a postpartum body can feel very, very, very foreign in general. And most partners are just absolutely floored by what your body just did.
Oh yeah. It's,
They don't,
yeah, I mean, so much of it is just they're enamored. And it's like, and I think sometimes there was like, it's almost so like hot and like to watch your partner be such a badass, right? Or like handle something that maybe was traumatic and the way that they handled it and they're stepping up, or just the determination to feed your baby when it's not going well. Like there's so many moments and things like that that are beautiful. And I think, yeah, like witnessing yourself with compassion is a huge piece of it. The other thing too I talk about is like using water. If you're having troubles, taking that first step, like water is so therapeutic. And so whether that's the shower and just being in the shower, using the shower head to massage your body, a bath, feeling supported with the warmth, it's another like easy, relatively, could be easier step than to just.
It's so nice because you're basically like, just like the flower, you're increasing sensation. And I think it's a lot about noticing,
Yeah.
with the case of traumatic birth leading to not wanting to be touched, it almost allows your touch receptors to send the information to the brain. Touch is safe. Touch is safe.
Yeah.
And if this touch is safe, what next step can we take that tells your brain that touch is safe?
Yeah, and I think the 3-minute game from the art of giving and receiving is so useful and helpful when there's birth trauma around touch, because the literal point of that is to create safety and vulnerability with yourself and your partner. And there is no sex involved. It is literally just touch.
Let's talk about it now.
Sweet. So The Art of Giving and Receiving is a fantastic book. Highly recommend. It's a big book, but one of the biggest pieces of it, the takeaway, is this 3-minute game. And so basically you and your partner play this game, and each round is about 3 minutes. And you sit in a space, and again, there's no intention of having sex. It's not even really meant to be sexual at all. It really is meant to be intimate and connecting. And so when you are the first person A, and your partner's person B, there's 2 rounds. And so the first thing you're going to ask is, how do you want to touch? How do you want me to touch you? So if I'm playing with you, Emily, how do you want me to touch you? And you get to tell me. So you have choice in what you want, and I have choice to say yes or no. And the goal is to be as specific as possible. And it's like, I want you to touch my left hand with a pressure of 8 in circular motions for 3 minutes. That's it. And it's a yes or no, and then you do it. And then
Krystle gets to decide, do I want to do that?
Right. Yeah. So there's so much control, but also vulnerability in asking and being seen for what you want. And then when that 3 minutes is done, then I come and say, how do you want to touch me? And so now you get to the choice of, how do you want to create pleasure in yourself by touching a part of me? So it's not about creating pleasure in my body. It's, how do you want to create pleasure in yourself by touching me somewhere? And so you could say, I want to rub your scalp for the next 3 minutes. And I could say yes or no. And then you could say, okay. And that's round 1.
Is it one thing for 3 minutes? Or can you say, I want a bunch of different things?
It's usually 1 for 3 minutes, just so that you can really focus on that one thing.
Okay.
And be really specific in what you want. And
like,
again,
not just rub my scalp, but rub with your fingertips or rub with your nails.
Yeah, at a level of 5, or in circular motions, or back and forth. Like, it really gets into having to be able to know yourself, trust yourself and what you want and need, being vulnerable enough to communicate to that your partner, being willing and open to receive that. So there's just so much give and take, and you're both the receiver, you're both the giver, you're both giving pleasure, you're both receiving pleasure, and it's just accessing all of those pieces. And it can be relatively short, right? So if you play 1 round, that's 6-7 minutes. That's it. Ideally, you play 3 rounds each, so it's about 21 to 30 minutes. But again, if we're starting small, it's great. Let's just do it for, those 6-7 minutes while baby's taking their quick 15-minute nap. It's just such a powerful thing. I've used it myself multiple times when, you get into a space where it's been a month, you know, for myself and my partner who are pretty, you know, sexually active regularly, if we go a month without being intimate, that's huge. That creates a very big gap for us.
Yeah.
And I either have to go one or two ways. I go into this like vulnerability, like let's play this game and start reconnecting, or I go the humor aspect. And I tell this to people and they think I'm so silly, and he'd probably kill me if he heard me saying this. But I remember one point it got really awkward. We were both kind of getting resentful. The gap was getting bigger. And I was like, this is stupid. And I was like, I'm breaking this tension. And I threw him on the bed and I took his pants off and I whipped out his penis and I just started playing with him, like in the most goofy, silly, like and it just broke the tension, right? Like sex doesn't have to be serious. It's supposed to be fun. And it was just, and that was all it took, right? And then from there, we had a great night and then it was fine. But you know, we find ourselves sometimes the longer we go without the intimacy and the connection and the touching, we get this weird, I call it the crevice, right? The gap, the water gets cold and frigid. And it just takes so much to get back into that space. So
just humor and playfulness. I think this is missed. And I think when we're talking about, you know, either a human came out of an incision in your abdomen or they came out of your vagina. It's wild that we do this. And then we want to stick something in there again. And like this also doesn't only pertain to cis hetero couples. I think it's really important for us to be talking about everyone when we're having this conversation, because there are infinite number of ways to be intimate and sexually active with your partners. And when we're talking about just the insertion of something into the vagina, it can be so scary. And I really like to have families just talk to each other even before the birth. I think this was probably the best instinct that I had, was to say to my partner, I am so terrified of having sex after birth. I'm so scared. And so he knew already coming into it that I had this fear. We had talked about it. We had talked about how we would communicate when it was time. And it made the whole experience feel so much safer for me.
I think that, I mean, you obviously don't want to say everyone, but I would say on average, most people giving birth have some version of that fear or worry that like what's going to happen afterwards. And having the conversation beforehand helps so much. And again, and that's kind of where a lot of, when I am working with couples, like that's one of the first pieces we do. It's really talking about, okay, what do you want? But also, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you not saying? Because a lot of times there's unspoken stuff going on. And 90% of the time your partners they're just open and willing to be like, of course, whatever you need. I don't, you know, it's not about that. And a lot of times too, it's like, okay, and even if when we're having these conversations, the partner's like, yes, I really need sex or want sex right now at 4 weeks, 5 weeks postpartum. It's like, okay, great. And what is that need fulfilling for you? Right? Does that mean you need physical touch in a way that is intimate? Because that's very different than penetrative sex.
Does it mean that you need an orgasm? Which is also different.
You need an orgasm because guess what? You can self-pleasure, and I'm happy to sit here and watch you and be together in that moment. I can touch your body, but it doesn't have to be penetrative sex. Do you need quality time? Do we need to sit together off of our phones and just look at each other or have a real conversation, right? Like, what is the basic need? Because sex is the third layer, right? Like, it's usually... it comes with the other pieces, right? We start with connection, and we can have connection with everyone and anyone in our lives, friends, family members, right? It's that piece of getting to know somebody, starting a first date, learning about them, right? They're that level of it in the capacity that we're starting to be valued and seen by this person. And then that builds intimacy. And we can have intimacy with really close friends, but this is when you start to get like that safety with a partner, right? Communication, compassion, that really raw vulnerability where like you can be yourself and trust, right? This is when you've got staring into each other's eyes and hugs and kisses on the forehead, that sweet, you know, feministic kind of soft love. And then usually we need those two things to get to sex, or we're looking to use sex to get to those things, right? And so understanding like what level of need do you and or your partner need when we're asking or wanting for those things is a huge piece of understanding ourselves and each other.
Like getting clear on what it is that it's giving you, because I think also something we haven't talked about is this like journey to having your baby potentially involved sex, and maybe involved like really regimented scheduled sex, and maybe involved sex that ended in disappointment month after month after month. And so it can really kind of kill the vibe when you're trying to be
100%.
intimate with your
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah. And even like, we talk about adopted parents or intended parents, like there may not be physical trauma or physical, healing needing involved, but like we talked about before, sleep deprivation is real,
Yeah.
right? It affects everything. And so just because you didn't physically have a child does not mean none of this pertains, right? It really all does, because your brain's still going to rewire itself. You're hyper focused on your little being. You're going to be like two ships passing in the night. And it's all valid, right? For everybody in this new world of parenting.
Yeah.
Sure.
If your baby ever needs a pacifier, and not all babies do, the one that I would want in your world is the Ninny. It's the only pacifier designed to actually mimic the shape and function of the breast. It looks like this. It's very soft here, like an areola, and then harder, like a nipple. And this shape means that it supports healthy oral development instead of interfering with it. I really love it because babies don't just passively hold it in their mouth like the ones with a bulb on the end. They have to actively suck. It's hard work. It's my workout pacifier. And that matters for feeding, for regulation, and for long-term oral function. It's especially beautiful for breastfed babies who need a little extra soothing without confusion. If you're listening and you're pregnant, postpartum, or buying for someone you love, you can grab a Ninny through the link in the show notes or use the code BeWellBaby for 10% off at checkout. It's one of these tiny little tools that makes a huge difference. And my favorite part about it is that babies don't get dependent on it. All right, let's get back to the show. Let's talk about a few really simple, small, doable practices that you recommend for rebuilding intimacy, either self-pleasure or with your partner.
I want to circle back really quick on the self-pleasure piece of it, because I just want to, because it's so important that, like, again, orgasmic energy is really, really healing. And when you get to a space that you do feel and can work self-pleasure into an orgasm, like, it could be so beneficial. It turns everything on in a really healthy way. It actually can lead to healing in ways. So that's just another reason to tap into that as, much as you want or you can, right?
And physiologically, what's happening when you bring yourself to orgasm is the blood flow to the area is increasing, which is why it's important for healing, because blood flow is decreased when you are postpartum, especially if you are chest feeding or breastfeeding, because the levels of estrogen in your body are lower. And a lot of people don't know that as we age in female bodies, estrogen decreases and your labia actually atrophy. It's wild. And that is something that, we need to kind of be talking about and understand and know about. The point is that we are asking of our bodies a lot postpartum, and that self-pleasure and specifically orgasm can lead to increased blood flow to your pelvic floor, which can increase the trajectory of your healing journey.
Yeah, on a very physical level. And it also does in like the emotional, psychological level too. Like, and I like to use the analogy of like boiling water, right? Like if you have a pot of frigid ice cold water that hasn't had any heat, it is going to take a long time to get from frigid ice cold water to boiling, right? AKA sex. So if you're able to maintain a simmer on this water, whether it's through self-pleasure or moments of intimacy, when you're ready or wanting or willing to have sex, it's going to be such an easy, can be an easy transition, right? And that's another piece of it too. And the other piece, and we can go down a whole female orgasm tangent, which we won't, but specifically females and males, but females in a much easier way, we don't have a orgasm. We have orgasms continuously. Like we can just keep going and going and going and going. And so there's so much potential to tap into. And that's another thing I just found so fascinating. Our bodies are, every time I learn something new about our bodies changing in pregnancy and postpartum and, you know, then sexually, it just adds another layer of how magic it all is.
It's magical. It's absolutely magical.
Yeah. So circling back, so little things, right? So again, finding pleasure in the little things. I always say like the key to good parenting is a good dance party because it just breaks the tension. It's really, really helpful. And then one thing that really helped myself is that, especially when I was kind of in that like postpartum depression phase where like obviously sex was way, way, way far and I was just struggling to be, you know, connected or intimate with my partner. I call it the favorite things list. And so basically myself and my partner, we each kind of sat down and wrote a list of like 5 to 10 things that brought us joy. And they could be as big or small as you want. So like mine was probably something like when you do the dishes without me asking, when you offer to make me tea, when you take the baby for a walk, right? Like little things. And I know his were more like when you wear my favorite underwear or when you touch me like this, right? It doesn't matter. It's your own personal journey. And it can be a combination of all the things to ever bring you joy. And then we physically printed them and hung them up in our house. And this way, whenever, depending on the day or the hour or the mood, I can be like, oh, like I want to connect with my partner. Let me find something that brings him joy. Or he's having a really hard day. Let me find something. And vice versa. Like when I'm having a bad day and I'm like, oh my gosh, listen to what the kids did today, right? He's like, oh, I'll bring her favorite treat from the store. So it's just such an easy, physically tangible way. And obviously if you're acts of service, it's a great love language helper. To just kind of, again, keep those moments of intimacy and connection going throughout the chaos of everything. And then we talked about the art of giving and receiving. I just adore that in so many ways. And then, you know, when I was on this journey, there was a lot of like, well, just schedule time to be together, schedule intimacy, schedule this, schedule that.
Schedule sex.
Right. And like, there's a piece of it that like, it can work, right? Because time is a huge, huge piece of why, you know, sex doesn't happen sometimes. But with that, there was just so much pressure to have sex, to orgasm, that I kind of wanted to flip it. And so what we chose to do is we had a candle and it was an intimacy candle. So it was not a sex candle. It was not an orgasm candle. It was an intimacy candle, right? Because intimacy then can lead to whatever you need without expectations. And so when one of us felt the need to be intimate or wanted to be intimate, we would light that candle. And again, with no expectations. And maybe that meant that at the end of the night, we were going to spoon because we could. Or maybe we would play the 3-minute game. Or maybe the kids went down early enough where we could actually, you know, have sex or be intimate. But it was almost like a visual reminder that, hey, I'm thinking of you. And that's hot.
And that candle can keep it at a simmer.
Exactly. Right. That's the heat, the physical reminder. And what's nice is it's like too, is like if he lit that candle, it was kind of a okay for me to go spend time getting myself ready. Right. Like, hey, you want that candle lit? Great. I'm going to go take a shower. I'm going to shave my legs.
Yeah.
I'm going to like put makeup on and maybe wear my like sexiest pajamas, right? Because it's a balance. When we feel good about ourselves, we can then give ourselves to our partners. And so it was such a nice, gentle way to like ease back into things. In that, again, the time where things are chaos. And if it didn't happen and we blow out the candle together, the key was we would hold hands and blow out the candle together. So even if it was literally the 30 seconds that we got doing that because life was blowing up, at least it was that, right?
Yeah. That's sweet. I love that you held hands and blew up the candle together.
When you have three under four,
a little passive aggressive sometimes where like one partner lights it and the other one blows it out.
Right. No. You had to be together, right? Well, like I said too, like, you know, circling back to like kids and personality is like, I had a kiddo that slept in our bed till he was 8. So you want to talk about a libido killer?
Yeah.
You know, like cock blocker, that kid, it was a skill. Right. And I swear at 14, he still is that skilled. But so again, like those moments are so few and far between. Right. So you have to take advantage, even if it's 30 seconds of standing next to each other and blowing out a candle.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we talk about this a lot, just as humans who end up helping people through this a lot. But if you could just completely rewrite the cultural script around sex and intimacy after birth, what would you want parents to hear instead of the nothing that they tend to hear?
I think the first thing is that all is normal. Like everything is normal, right? I love that you use that phrase, like it's not you're not a failure, it's not a failure, right? Like that's so huge because usually female identifying people, we tend to take everything internally and take the guilt and the shame and everything that goes along with it. So I think a huge piece of it, like to shift the cultural norm, would just to be open and honest with communication. Like you said, before birth, you know, postpartum, and where you are postpartum at 4 weeks is going to be very, very different than where you are at 12 weeks, which is going to be very, very different at where you are, you know, 20 weeks, 24 weeks, you know, those kinds of months and stuff. So and having those check-ins is huge, right? Like,
and it occurs to me that we haven't really touched on intimacy can change when you're pregnant, especially if you're pregnant with multiples. Like, your body is large and you have to change maybe positions that you enjoyed before. 100%. And there's just things that are changing. And sometimes penetrative sex just doesn't make sense anymore. And I really like to encourage people to, you know, make it silly and fun and like do self-pleasure next to each other. If you've never done that before, it's an amazing tool and can be a way for you to sort of up-level the intimacy that you already had with your partner. I would argue that now, after 3 babies, I am way, way closer to my partner. I feel more comfortable, more intimate than I did before the birth of my first baby. And it's because of the communication that we were able to have.
I think being self-pleasuring in front of your partner or anyone is one of the more vulnerable things we can do. And it's so intimate. It's to watch someone pleasure themselves and be vulnerable and orgasm. It's beautiful and it's vulnerable and it's magic. And that's a huge piece of it. I think that's a lot of, you know, what we circle back in the beginning is like starting there, right? Like when you're ready to be touched, even if it's by yourself, like that's a huge, huge piece of it. And you know, even with the pregnancy, it doesn't necessarily have to be the pregnant person. Like for my specific relationship, my partner had this like weird, irrational fear of having sex with me. It was going to harm me and the baby. And so once I got to like the second trimester and was showing, it was awkward and hard. And we had to be very like creative in ways to pleasure each other because he had a really hard time having penetrative sex or wanting it.
I love the word creative in this because it's an art, it's creative, it's beautiful, it's interesting. You're getting to know different parts of your body and different parts of your partner. Yeah.
And I think you know, we talk about this a lot. Like there are a lot of people who don't regularly offer oral sex to women. And whether that's out of just like fear of not knowing what they're doing or like female anatomy is very complex and different than male anatomy. And for some people, it can be really intimidating. And so, you know, I think when you're in this space of growing and connecting and like having someone's child, like it's such a great space to maybe try new things. And if oral sex on a female is not something you've done before or has been done to you, like what a great time to start talking about it and thinking about it. It doesn't have to be awkward or nerve-wracking, right? Like you're learning together, you're doing together, because it's a very, again, intimate, magical thing that is very usable after baby's born because it's a great way to create pleasure and orgasms before having any sort of penetrative involvement.
I really like to encourage that communication like in the middle of it as well because it can break tension and it can also like encourage people to think, is this pleasurable to me? Is there a way that this could be more pleasurable to me? And that's why I love the water or the flower and just those finding those moments of pleasure without having to think about it as sexual. Because when you then can translate that into a sexual experience, you are able to notice, do I like this? Is there something that could be happening, like maybe with speed, slower, faster, something different that I would enjoy more? Let's try, you know?
Yeah, maybe lighter pressure is better than the like let's go at it pressure, right? Like
Right.
that sensation I had that like up my spine, that tingling feeling when I took the rose up my arm. Like I want that. Like how do I get that? And like
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, and then you're exploring and experimenting together, and that feels exciting and fun rather than saying like, I don't like that, do this differently. You know,
Yeah.
it's this mutual exploration and opening the door for that by asking the question, do you like this better than this? Which one do you like better? You know,
Yeah.
and that can sort of open up your partner's mind to the idea that, you know, just because you've done sex the same way for your whole relationship doesn't mean that you have to keep doing it that way.
Yeah. And again, that's like, again, the 30-minute game comes in too, because you start to ask for things that maybe you wouldn't have done before. Or like, again, you or your partner realize, wow, like that spot behind the back of my knee is way more sensitive than I ever thought, you know, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it brings up a topic that we haven't talked about is like your imagination
Yes.
is a huge piece of like the puzzle, right? Our brains are wired to make our bodies have physical reactions to things, right? Like that's why we have fantasies that we play in our heads, or when we're reading books, it like turns us on and lights all the fires, right? If you sit and really think about a lemon and you close your eyes and you like picture the lemon and what it tastes like and what it smells like, you're gonna salivate just from thinking about it. Your body
I'm salivating.
right? Exactly. So it works with sex too, right? Like if you are envisioning the pleasure that you can have or want to have in that moment, your body's, it's going to help, right? It may not work completely, especially again, we talked about all the different things that's going on in your body, but it's only going to add one more level of help, you know, helping in that aspect of being imaginative and what you want and can have. And maybe it's taboo and maybe it's, you know, not what you're supposed to, but that's okay too, right? Like that's what your imagination is for. It's
I
there
think the
to
point is there is no supposed to.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's all good. I admittedly read lots of adult smut books and I love the ones that push boundaries where I'm like, ooh, is that I don't know how I feel about that. Like it takes me a second to be like, okay, where's my boundary on that? Is that attractive? How can that be attractive? Or is like, you know what, that's just too far. Or maybe
not
it's
for
like,
me.
oh,
Yeah.
actually, I never thought of that being attractive. Like maybe I want to try that, right? Let's like use all of our tools, use all the things that we can, right?
Yeah, totally. Ugh, Krystle, what a fun conversation.
Yeah.
I could talk to you about this for
Forever.
days, probably. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you're like, gosh, these people need to know this?
I mean, we briefly touched on it, but I know we haven't said the word lubrication,
Oh,
but
yeah.
lube is your friend. Like your body is changing. You talked about it, right? Like prolactin creates vaginal dryness. There's so many things. So like, please don't be shy about using lube, especially if you've never had to use it before vaginally. Like, and maybe you use it for a little bit and you can get away with it sometimes, or, you know, noticing all the things. But lube is definitely your friend. There's no reason to be shy or think that, again, you're wrong or it's a failure. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple lubes that I recommend postpartum, and there are also vaginal hydration gels that I recommend because if you are breastfeeding, your estrogen levels are lower, like we talked about. So there is actual physiological reason that you might feel dry. It doesn't mean that you aren't turned on. And I think that's a huge, huge misconception
that's huge.
that is missed so much. And with an estradiol, like there are so many different creams you can ask your providers to prescribe that will actually help to increase the estrogen in your tissues and help with lubrication. And lubricants in general are like, use them forever, use them prenatally. It's really amazing to see what a big difference it makes in terms of that actual pain piece, the thing that people are afraid of.
Yeah, 100%.
And something else that I wish we had spent more time on positions. Maybe we'll just do a full episode on positions.
Totally. Yes. Yes, please.
But I will just say that sometimes like doggy style or from behind can be really, really scary for someone who has had a tear and who has sutures and a scar, and it can be painful. So talking about the positions that you enjoy the most and talking about trying different things to feel where there is the least amount of pain.
And it could be the smallest angle, right? If you're in traditional missionary, there's a million different ways to do that position depending on where the person on the bottom's legs are, right? And so, I mean, I remember I had scar tissue after one of my births, and it was literally like we would just work the angle up until it was like, oh, that's too high. We'll go back down. I'm like, oh, you're right. So I mean, even just the smallest angles and shifts could be a game changer.
And being willing to say, like, especially if you're the partner and you're like, I really want to try, like, From Behind is my favorite. We haven't done it in like 2 years. You know, let's give it a try, and be willing to have it not work. And, like, agree together, we're going to try this and it may not work. And like have a signal, maybe it's a hand signal, but also as the partner, you're learning to be acutely aware of the birthing person's body and how they're reacting, because sometimes they don't want to say anything, but their body says everything.
100%. Because nobody wants to be a letdown or, you know, not give their partner what they need, right? It's you know, I mean, I've been in that situation recently where we had a scenario and it wasn't working and I had to say stop. And even, you know, after 20 years and it was still a moment of awkwardness that we circled back on, and it led to an amazing conversation, and we tried different things. I'm like, that's what I was, okay, right? Like there was a lack of communication. I had a vision, he had a vision, and right? So it's again, it's not just in the interim of postpartum, like it is your sexual relationship moving forward, right? It's all those pieces of it for sure.
I think just the openness to be willing to talk about it is everything.
And then you know, not every relationship is very sexually forward or open, or there's, like you said, there's shame and guilt. So I think starting with something simple like the 3-minute game where it's not sexual and you're just asking for what you want and practicing that is huge. And self-pleasuring on your own in your own space where you can like navigate that, like those two pieces really support situations like that for sure.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Krystle, for your time.
I love it. Like I said, I love this topic. I feel like it should be, I always forget her name. She passed away recently, but she was like this older grandma who had a sex show on TV that I watched in college. And I think she was like German. And she's like, we should talk about sex like we talk about brushing our teeth, right? It's just part of our lives. So anytime I love it. It's important for
sexual health is everything, and sexual wellness, you know. I want all my clients to have amazing sex lives.
Exactly. It makes everybody happy. Like, don't we just like have a world of happy people having sex? Like that's like end game. Oh my gosh.
Amazing. That's how we're going to end the episode.
Life goals.
A world of happy people having sex.
I love it. Sweet.
Oh, Krystle, thank you so much.
Of course.
I appreciate you. I really want to thank you, Krystle, for this conversation. I feel like, honestly, we have so much more to say on this topic. And before you go, I wanted to share something that we're doing here at Be Well Baby. I am hosting free sex after birth workshops all over town and also online. The next one is happening July 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Flourish Center, and I really want you to be there. This one is for the birthing bodies only. I really want it to be a space where you can feel open and honest and not like someone else's partner is judging you. So partners get baby duty that night and can handle bedtime at home, and then you can come back with new communication skills to share with them. You are welcome to bring your babes in arms if you have them, and you're also welcome to pump. You can change someone's diaper. Hopefully it's a baby's. Whatever you need to be there, I want you to be there. These workshops are going to be all over Portland, so keep an eye out for them. And if July 24th works for your schedule, please come. I want to see you there. You can go to bewellbaby.org/sexafterbirthclass to sign up. There's little dashes between all of the words, sex-after-birth-class. I really hope to see you there. There's links in the show notes as well. Audio and music production by the amazing Peter Gary, with Lillian Ewert managing all scheduling and operations of Be Well Baby, including this podcast. Thank you both for making this happen. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and I'd love for you to follow us on Instagram at BeWellBabyPDX or visit bewellbaby.org to book a time to chat with us. And And if this episode helped you, please send it to someone who's pregnant, postpartum, or someone in your life who wants to support you better. No one should have to do this alone. Welcome to Be Well Baby. You're in the right place.